everybody, and welcome to the Connections with Cass podcast. My name is Cass. I'm a psychic medium and spiritual coach here to help bridge the gap between the spirit world and the physical world. In this podcast, we talk about all things spiritual, all things healing, and mediumship. In today's episode, we're going to talk about mediumship and what it is, how it works, and why I believe it's super important to incorporate into our lives as we navigate this human journey as spiritual beings. So, I did not know that I was a medium. For most of my life, I definitely felt like things were a little bit different or there were weird coincidences that happened, but I had no idea that I could communicate with people that had departed this earth. And I was definitely interested in famous mediums like Tyler Henry or Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium. And in my 20s, I was connected through a gift card. Somebody had given me a gift card to see a medium who I really valued and thought that it was real and thought I believed it, but wasn't 100% sure. And as you've heard in other episodes, I did have a few experiences in my mid to late 20s that really awoke me to the fact that there's definitely something more at play here. One of those was a vision during a meditation. And I had always, looking back, kind of heard voices in my head that I thought were my own voice. But now looking back, I recognize that it was probably my past loved ones that I just didn't identify as so because it was in the sound of my own voice. So that being said, as I started to awaken to that there was more to life, there was about a year that I was practicing my psychic development and I was definitely making progress there, but I still had no idea that I was a medium and didn't know that the skills that I was using as a psychic could be crossed over to mediumship. And I do believe that all mediums can absolutely do psychic work pretty easily, and then not all psychics can do mediumship. And that's simply because mediumship exists at a higher vibration, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And it's not to say that the psychics can't do that, but it's just not as accessible. And it takes a little bit more of opening up energetically in order to reach that higher vibrational state and a little bit more of imagination, but we'll get into that later too. So my mediumship journey really started quite a while into my spiritual awakening when I was gifted a ticket to go see Maureen Hancock. So my mother had decided to go to see one of Maureen Hancock's, a pretty well-known medium in New England, her live demonstration. And she had invited me to go. And I honestly said, no, I don't want to go. And there was a delay in communication with our text messages. So she had already purchased a ticket for me. And I said, oh gosh, I really don't want to go. And she's like, well, I already bought the ticket. And it was absolutely divinely guided. The whole time we're going there, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. Like, I'm just not in the mood for it today. I had kind of gotten in a rut with my spirituality and I felt kind of at a loss. Like, what am I doing with my life? I had devoted a lot of my time to developing my psychic skills and meditating and healing and bettering myself. And I just didn't see where all of it was going. And so when she asked me to go, it just didn't feel like the right time or the right place. But you got to trust that sometimes, especially when you're in a lower vibration, if somebody offers you a higher vibrational experience with that, which that definitely was, take it, because I ended up going and we got into the line to enter the space. There was probably, I would say, 150 people there. It was a large demonstration and my mom had my ticket. And when she showed the ticket to the person that was leading us to our seats, the woman was like, wait, this person isn't on my list. And my mom was like, oh, I just bought the ticket today. It was a last minute edition. And she's like, well, it was sold out for like 3 days. You shouldn't have been able to buy this ticket. And she looked at me like, you can't come in here. And my mom's like, well, we were able to buy the ticket. I have the ticket right here. Like, are you going to let her in? And the woman was all exasperated. She's like, well, I guess I'll have to add another chair here and da 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 da. So she brings us to our seats and we sit down. And to me, like, I was so in a rut. I was like, you know what? This is not meant to be. I knew it, And there's so many people there. It's not like we're going to get picked for a reading, etc. So Maureen Hancock is incredible. She starts her show. She's so funny. She's a comedian as well as a medium. And she has a really incredible story as well. So she starts to tell her story and starts to connect. And this woman is so incredible. She is just going person to person in the crowd. I swear she did at least 40 readings within an hour, and she's just bouncing from family to family, from person to person, like your grandmother Rose, she was a gardener, and da 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 da, like names, just identifying the person, sending a message, identifying the loved one and sending a message. It was absolutely incredible. So she calls on my mom's friend that I'm with and she gives her a reading, and then my mom starts, and then she asks, is this your daughter next to you? And she said yes. And she said, okay, give her the mic. Out of, she probably did 75 readings that day. Out of the 75 readings, every single other reading was a loved one had stepped forward to pass along a message, traditional mediumship. And she said, To me, she said basically like there's no loved ones here present that I'm going to connect you with. Not that there wasn't loved ones present, but I'm not going to connect you with a loved one. But they're telling me that you don't finish the books, you don't finish the classes, that you have been, exploring your spirituality. You've always been a lucid dreamer and you're so close to having a breakthrough, but you're not pushing through. You're not finishing the tasks. And I had not told anyone in my life other than my mother and two of my close friends that I was even interested in this kind of stuff. I had been atheist most of my life, agnostic for, some of my 20s, but for the most part, very, very not expressive about what I was doing and had been hermiting. Like I hadn't even seen a lot of my friends at that point because I had just been like healing and just taking care of myself and exploring my spirituality, which was what people didn't know. So it was so shocking. I mean, I was speechless. I have it all recorded, but I'm just like, I didn't even respond. And she said a couple of other things that were really relevant. But from that experience, I mean, my head was like buzzing, and even before she had given me the reading, I felt a really incredible energy in that room. And then like watching her do it definitely was inspiring me to begin with. So after I left that, I was like, wow, okay, I have to commit myself to this. I have to keep going. I knew deep down, I was like, you're on the right track. You have to keep going with this. You're not crazy. Like this is all very real and you have to keep going. And there was a metaphysical store that was close to my house that I had been to a few times to get crystals. And I know they did classes. So I wasn't looking for any class in particular. Still didn't think I was a medium, but I just decided to do Introduction to Mediumship because it was the next class. Like the following weekend, the Introduction to Mediumship was happening at that store. So I signed up for it and I took that class, and that's when I had that first experience that I talk about in an earlier episode. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself and I've told this whole story in another episode, but that's fine. So basically, they had us do a meditation and sat us down in front of another person and said, okay, go, like do a mediumship reading. So I just started to imagine the sky. And that's the best word I have for it is I just started to imagine the sky. I thought I was making it up. And then I wasn't paying attention to the woman, and I looked over at the woman in front of me after I had gotten a few pieces of evidence about who I was imagining, quote unquote, in my mind. And she's crying and she's like, that's my dad. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really talking to a dead person. Like, this is wild. I never, ever thought in a million years that I would be doing this, but it felt so real. It felt so grounding, and it felt like, yeah, like this is what you're supposed to do. So from there, I definitely wanted to help people through doing mediumship, and I just committed myself to understanding everything that I could about it and practicing as much as I could and just learning all that I could. I took the route of not taking classes to technically learn the aspects of mediumship, but I continued to heal. I continued to seek answers like more within myself through some books as well. But then most of my development was really in just practicing with other people. I joined a bunch of practice groups and was connected divinely, I would say, with this woman who was very active in a lot of the practice circles, and she helped me a lot, and she would send me reminders, hey, like 1:00 today, you got to go to this practice circle, or 4:00 today, Cass, you got to come to this practice circle. And she constantly kept me really committed to practicing, and that's what I did. Through each practice session, I learned more about myself, and I learned more about mediumship, and I learned more about the universe. And in between those practice sessions, I would meditate and ask questions about how this all works. And, in between that, I would read books, and in between that, I would work on my healing process. And I would say my mediumship skills have not changed really much since the first time I did it. But my confidence and my ego have definitely changed. There definitely was pressure on myself at the beginning to get things right and to prove that I was a medium. And just like the energy behind my mediumship has definitely changed, while the technical aspects or the amount of evidence I get or the clarity of the messages, I think are pretty much the same as the exact first time I did it. So that's something to consider as we move forward and talk about how I think this works as well. I think that we'll go from here to talk about how I believe that it works. And there's definitely, I think, this misconception that mediumship is just very much like outside of ourselves, or very technical and very something that we have to learn and something that only a few people can learn to do. And the more I learn about it, the more I coach others in, becoming mediums, the more I just don't subscribe to that. So how I perceive this to work is that we are energetic beings having a human experience, and our soul comes into this human body. The soul emits a frequency that allows us to communicate energetically with other humans in our life and higher entities, as well as process energy within ourselves based on all of the human things that we experience and our soul's true frequency inherently. So, as we go about our day, you hear me talk about this all the time. We're constantly receiving communication from others, we're giving communication to others, and we are constantly kind of filtering our own energy based on the different experiences that we have, based on our ego and our mind, based on our nervous system, and based on our body. So, it's this multifaceted process of energetic communication and almost a filtering system of this energy that's coming in and out of us and moving within us. And all that mediumship is, from my perception, is that energetic communication with souls that are in a different space than us. The thing with mediumship is it's not obvious that we can do this because our loved ones are in a higher vibrational plane. So the physical body and the density of the third dimensional experience on Earth keeps us very weighted down, and our energy is much lower than those who have departed are in our just an energetic form. Once they leave the physical body, they are in a higher vibrational plane of unconditional love and light. But essentially, it is just a little bit harder for us to notice because things in the lower vibrational dimension are just the physical things of life are much more able to be perceived by our physical senses. And we're not taught about our energetic senses. And even so, our energetic senses are much more nuanced than the physical senses. And so it does take some attunement in order to reach this higher vibrational plane where our loved ones are. But every single person that is listening to this right now, I believe that every single person on this earth is an energetic frequency within and of themselves and can energetically communicate with other people and these higher vibrational spaces. It just takes us to learn how we are naturally energetically communicating throughout our days, as well as raising our vibration. And then we talk about how to raise our vibration. The easiest and most accessible thing that we do to raise our vibration, I think, in the spiritual path and the spiritual awakening, and most of you who are listening to this that are interested in this stuff have explored meditation. So that naturally is going to kind of get us out of our minds and raise our vibrational state in order to access higher realms. But the thing that we don't talk about in the spiritual space, at least that I've encountered throughout my now several years of exploring mediumship, is the concept of the imagination. So when we're kids, we're very innocent, right? And we can dream up that there are dragons in the yard playing with us, and there's unicorns, and there's et cetera, et cetera. And we also might even have imaginary friends that are past loved ones or have memories of our past lives. And we can constantly shift into that imaginary world and into this physical world. And from my understanding of how I do mediumship and in exploring how this works, as well as coaching others, I think there's a huge element of just letting go and using our imagination brain, is what I call it, to access this higher realm. So in addition to meditating in order to get out of our minds, we also can just go into our imagination and see spirit pretty easily. That being said, we can use our imagination and we can learn the technical aspects of mediumship and learn it pretty quickly, but it's not sustainable if you haven't healed. And that's what I found through my process of healing at the same time in conjunction with my spiritual growth. Is the healing process has allowed me to access mediumship in a really healthy way that's not detrimental to my physical health. It's not detrimental to my emotional health. And I can objectively experience spirit without a lens of any of my trauma or wounds, which allows me to experience it in a really high vibrational way. And I think that really helps in mediumship is clearing ourselves from the trauma and the wounds and the human conditioning and the ego and the mind in order to just create a higher vibrational baseline for then you connecting to this even higher vibrational plane of unconditional love and light where our loved ones exist. And it just makes the whole process more sustainable and more beautiful and lighter. And that brings us also into why we do it. So I think up until this point, because of the lack of transparency with how this works, the lack of true knowledge about how this works. I mean, if we think about before technology, there were small there were small communities that existed that, people I think would have these gifts, but it was just like this weird thing that happened that you looked at that person differently and you might have sought counsel from them. A lot of, kings and queens and royalty had astrologers that were on their teams in the medieval times and throughout history, actually. Even Princess Diana and a lot of the royalty in the UK have talked about having professional psychics and mediums and astrologers and that they would consult with regularly in order to help them move through life. So there's been this idea that, a select few can do this. And I think that's just because the awareness of how it works wasn't able to be spread widely. And it is overwhelming for people to experience spontaneously. So in the past, if you experienced an awakening spontaneously and you became a medium, even for myself, like it felt very otherworldly and like it wouldn't happen to everyone. And I don't think it will happen in that way for everyone. But I do think that coming into awareness of our energetic communication capabilities as human beings and coming into an understanding that our spirit lives in this body and will live on in another space of beautiful, beautiful energy is something that is shifting due to the addition of technology and the awareness. Like, just think about how many things in this world right now are able to be taught or learned much differently than in the past due to the vast, accessibility of knowledge and accessibility of people like myself sharing their own experiences that then people resonate with, they look into for themselves, and they have tools in order to help guide them into this awareness. And I don't think it's a coincidence that there is, if I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but there is an understanding within the spiritual community that the world is shifting into a higher consciousness. And that can only be done when people that are quote unquote like light workers or people that are here to raise the vibration of the earth connect with this essence of themselves and recognize that they are an energetic frequency or a spiritual being having a human experience and utilize that capability of knowing that in order to live brighter lives and come into their power more and shine their light more, which can include doing mediumship. So if you ever felt inclined to explore your spiritual gifts and you felt like you've had strong intuition or you felt like you just have noticed some weird things or all of a sudden more coincidences are happening and you're like, there's got to be more here. What am I supposed to do with this? I think it's important to have a why of why you want to explore your spiritual gifts. I think that's the most important thing to consider as you move forward. And in the past, mediumship has definitely been used to help the grieving process and to provide, evidence or awareness and messages that our loved ones are still very much a part of our lives and with us in a sense in our lives as well. But I think that's going to shift too. As more people recognize, and this is happening already, I mean, look at the amount of you that are interested in this topic, right? There's a shift happening where it's going to be more common knowledge that mediumship is real. And so right now there's still an emphasis on evidential mediumship, which I think is very valuable in providing evidence or validation that when I do mediumship, I'm connecting to a certain soul. And most of the reading is just providing that evidence and providing memories and providing validation that it is them that I'm speaking to. The most beautiful part of mediumship, I think, it's the messages that your loved ones send to you through mediumship. And it's kind of validation through the messages that their soul, their essence, and their mistakes in life and their beautiful parts of their life can still influence you in this life. And that's why we love our people, right? Like we go around in our lives loving the people around us because their essence provides value for us. Or we go around not liking someone because we don't feel like their essence provides value or takes away from our light. And so in this higher vibrational state, when they step forward, oftentimes it's with an apology if they weren't that great of a person. And their essence can help us move forward and heal from that and grow from that. And so as we talk about the shift in mediumship, I really feel like there's going to be a shift where people just trust that past loved ones exist in a higher vibrational plane, and there's less of an emphasis on needing to prove that through validation or evidence. And there will be more of an opening to just appreciating the messages that come through more than the evidence. And it's going to be a while before that happens, but the more people that step into their power and recognize their energetic communication capabilities, this will just shift. And I know now when I get a mediumship reading, it's less about, if somebody gives me 3 or 4 facts that they're with my grandfather, I'm like, okay, that's Tony. I know that's Tony. But what does he have to say? And in this space, if you're a developing medium too, I think that I deliver messages in a slightly different way than most mediums because I really focus on the essence of the soul to provide support for you in your life now. And when we're communicating with these souls that are in this higher vibrational place, their soul is expansive, it's infinite, it contains so much knowledge of everything that they went through in this past life and other lives. And they're in a place that I don't know exactly how it works, but it's insanely vast and expansive. And their soul's frequency or their song is so special to us because we chose to come into this life with them, right? And I also believe that we chose to have them exit this life in the time that they did to help us energetically. So if you lost someone young, for example, I always feel when I connect to somebody who's lost someone at a young age, that soul was meant to be present energetically for you in this lifetime rather than physically. And oftentimes it's actually the most beautiful message that you decided to do that. Your soul decided to do that and their soul decided to come in this way together in order to provide you with an experience where they're actually with you all the time. Even if it's in an unconscious knowing, their soul is with you all of the time and guiding you very much in so many ways without your ego getting involved, without you being able to say no to them. And so it's really beautiful that they're in that space, but we just don't look at it that way because we think of the physical relationship with our loved ones as being superior to this energetic relationship. And I think there's a shift there that can happen too, where we can recognize that this energetic communication, when we start to, tune into it and really recognize it, it's ever present and it's infinite. And so when I deliver messages, I really try to feel the essence of the soul that I'm connecting to. And then they kind of lean into an aspect of the sitter's life or the person I'm giving the reading to, their life, that their soul is helping them move through. And just like in their physical life, a lot of the time, like they would provide some sort of support that's unique to them that they are helping the person through. And I look for that. And that's something that's there, but I don't think that everybody that does mediumship does. So if you are a developing medium, I just encourage you to go a little deeper and to think a little bit bigger and to not just rely on what you see at the forefront of the readings, what comes in quick, what comes in fast, what comes in bright, but really start to feel in your heart space the essence of this soul and then communicate what that soul, how that essence is helping the person that you're giving the reading for. And as we move forward, I think in mediumship and in just spirituality in general, as people start to wake up to the fact that this is very real, and there's less of a need to prove that kind of stuff, I think more messages will be delivered in a little bit of a deeper sense, a little bit of a deeper sense of understanding of the vastness of the universe and the infinite potential of our experiences here. And it'll just be beautiful. Our hearts and our souls know that this is real. This is not our first time doing this. And our souls exist, in more places in the universe than just this physical plane right now. So our souls know, our heart knows. And so when more people start to connect and believe that there is more to life and that there is life after death and that, mediumship is inherently just real. We don't have to prove it, and start to look for the messages that open them up energetically to have their loved ones come in and share their essence more. We all will shift into a higher consciousness, which is kind of the plan anyways, to hopefully ascend some of this very dense energy that exists on Earth and a lot of the hardship and pain and all the tough stuff that we experience here. So as we start to really, really feel into our heart and expand energetically and come into the heart and less into the mind, the whole world will be a better place, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And that is why I love doing mediumship. And that is why I love working in this space in general and just, coaching people in order to connect with their true soul and their essence. Not only is it helping their life, but it's also helping the world. And I think the more that we work on ourselves, the more that we work on our own grieving processes, the more that we move through our traumas and our wounds, the more that we clear the dense energy from our own energetic beings, the lighter this world will be. And I think it's really important to note that we can't change the world. We can't change things outside of ourselves. We can't control things outside of ourselves. We can't change the politics of the space that we live in. We can't change things that are happening to other people necessarily, but we can change ourselves. And we can do a lot of work to make ourselves better. We can make ourselves lighter. We can come into a place of leading with our heart instead of our mind, a place of less judgment, less fear, less negativity, and that will transform the consciousness of the earth. And it is a beautiful gift that we have here to do that. So whether you're exploring your mediumship, whether you're exploring your psychic skills, whether you're just interested in spirituality, I highly recommend going on a healing process with shadow work and inner child healing. And through doing that, most likely you will start to wonder and explore what your spiritual gifts are and come into knowing that you are all a medium too. And it is an amazing opportunity to connect not only with, these higher vibrational souls that can give us so much wisdom and guidance here on earth, but to connect with your own true essence too and feel what it means to be an energetic being having a very human experience in this lifetime. So I hope that clears up some of your questions around mediumship, gives you maybe a different perspective of mediumship. And as always, I have a slightly different conceptualization of a lot of things in the spiritual realm. And I trust and honor that that's my path this time around. I purposely don't read a lot of books. I purposely don't use AI. I purposely don't seek out a lot of classes. I've really tried to go within and get a lot of downloads from meditation and connect to my guides for messages. And with that, I'll get feelings and impressions and knowings. And then that oftentimes is validated by I stumble across something that, kind of confirms that somebody else is having the same experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is real. Like that just validates it for me. So while we have all of these tools and all of these references that we can use to learn about this stuff, truly, at the end of the day, no one knows what exactly happens when we die, including myself. What I speak about really resonates with me. It's been my personal experience, and I love to share that to help others. But at the end of the day, no person that has written a book, no person that is talking on TikTok or, on TV for that matter, really knows exactly what happens. We all have our personal experiences, and I believe strongly that we are all experiencing our personal spiritual growth in this lifetime in the exact way that we are meant to, in order for our soul to learn, grow, and evolve in the way that it was meant to in this lifetime. So I hope that helps you on your spiritual paths and in understanding mediumship, and I will see you in the next episode.